Jonathan.
Hi.
How are you today?
Good.
I've got some questions for you.
Okie doke.
Um, in your bio, you say that you've been reading people for over 30 years. That's really, really impressive. How would you measure your success as a reader?
Huh. Um, as a reader, you're kind of only as successful as the predictions or guidance delivered uh, as it comes to fruition and you see it, would be how you would rate the success. Um,
I would find that would be pretty hard because you're giving a person a reading and you don't know what the outcome is. They just walk away. So you would only know when they come back to you and they share stories?
Correct. A large percentage of the readings are repeated customers or folks that have an ongoing relationship with the reader and the tarot. And so traditionally, if you give a reading, you want to wait at least one season, preferably two, to allow time for things to kind of come into fruition. So the success of it is because of word of mouth. You know that you're doing well when you don't have to advertise and you have plenty of business because of word of mouth, because people report the evidence of the predictions. Um,
Well, I can say, just from working with you at Meta Lighthouse, you must be a great reader because you have a lot of repeat customers and the feedback is always positive. Um, for our viewers who have never had a reading before, can you walk us through what they should expect in a reading?
yeah, it's different for each person, but the goal of the first reading, and I don't always remember to ask, but I generally ask when I don't remember a face is, have you ever had a reading before? Because if the answer is no, then I don't allow for it to get too esoterical. I look for the main frame of the reading so that the person who's sitting across from me on their first experience, basically what they can expect is a view of a map of where they are and where they're going. The past sometimes is relevant because if it's tied into the present somehow or there's something undone, but traditionally it's present to future, glimpses of the past. Um, so they can expect to get information from their higher self and their guides through the cards so that they can make the best decisions for the curriculum that they're going through, whether it be in love, money, job, health.
Well, when I think of getting a reading or seeing a psychic, I think most psychics give advice to people about those things, relationships and jobs and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, in your bio, you seem to take a different approach because you talk a lot about guiding entrepreneurs and even scientists.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us or the listeners an example of a business person or an entrepreneur that you've helped?
Sure. The client or the customer or the person, each's circumstances are different, right? And through time, certain folks started to come to me that were business inclined, entrepreneurs, scientists. So their interests are a little different than somebody that's just trying to get an overview of love or health or things. So some of the examples, I've sat with certain scientists, and one of them, I might have used the gift to help them re-look at what they were developing as far as the way, modifying certain things to make it optimized. So the reading would reveal you need this kind of pressure or this kind of heat or this laser or whatever it is. And so the evidence would be that they would tinker with that information and come back and reveal that, yeah, this has helped. So I take a vested interest in certain sciences because, and I enjoy that because I realize that, again, every reading I'm trying to reveal, see their path so that I can shed light on choices, what's best for them, to burn karma, for the best for them and others around them. That's the sole purpose of a reading, is to shed light, not to control or any of that. So with sciences, I really have an invested personal interest because I realize some of these scientists are working on things that could really exponentially help humanity as a whole. So, there's been examples where I've helped tweak things with technologies, and more importantly, with high technology, you usually need high money. So there's a whole business trajectory that we look at. Who do you want to work with? When you're working with high technology, you don't want greed-based people. You don't want people just looking at the bottom line. You want people looking at how they really want to get involved with their money and help. So we would navigate, use the cards on who to avoid, or these kind of people are coming and let's go this way, or maybe this one looks good. And sure enough, the evidence would be, we'd sit and you'd say, oh, it looks like someone's coming from, say, California, and looks like they're going to really help out. And then 6 months later, they come back, and sure enough, there's someone from California putting money in. So these are the type of things. It's a navigation process, just so people can, again, make the best decisions. Entrepreneurs, the same thing. They're helping humanity on a smaller level, maybe, than technology in some ways. I've been able to help certain business owners, even in restaurant business and things like that, just to get, or, other businesses, usually entrepreneurs, real business people, don't just have one business. Traditionally they have a few. And so my job as a reader when they consult me, of course, is to, how are we going to get them their bottom line, which is business and money, so they're interested in making money, and how are we going to do this without losing money? And quite frankly, sometimes they come to me with business concepts and ideas, and we look and we see whether it's feasible, not. Sometimes these concepts, the cards will reveal, well, look, the first couple of years, very challenging, not that good. But then it lightens up as time goes on. And then it's up to the entrepreneur whether they want to get involved with that. So I like to let people make their own decisions.
It's really, really fascinating, Jason. I'm just going to step away from my next question is about communicating with people who have passed.
Okay.
And I know that you prefer to work with advanced intelligence rather than human spirits, but is that something that you also can do?
It is. The label of a psychic is like a jack of all trades, where a medium is segregated into a specific trade, right? So yes, I can get messages from people beyond. Sometimes the reason why I don't tread there is because I've worked on unsolved cases before with, tragic situations, and I've had a few. And I've literally had,
a lot of sadness.
a lot of sadness, a lot of, even to the point of feeling the person's death, psychically.
Yeah.
And there's a few examples of that in my history where literally, here's one example. I had a client, a family of people that would come to me, mother, daughter, sister. And one of the girls I was counseling for many years. And,
So one of your clients passed away?
She passed away. She passed away, as a matter of fact, while I was in a reading. I immediately felt this overwhelming pain in my head and around my neck area, to the point where it debilitated me in the reading. So it was metaphysical energy coming from beyond the grave. And I literally had to shut down. What I had found out within 2 hours is that a specific client that I was very attached to supposedly had killed herself. And, so in the human realm on the other side, there's a lot of different tales, just as it is here. So I can get information and I do sometimes go there for people, but I keep it very limited in reference to, that realm. I don't stick around that realm so much. And most of the spirits that I see anyway are usually transitioning to the other side, right? So they're around their family or they want to give a message. But 9 times out of 10, the good news is when I am seeing spirits, I always see like behind them this door, if you will, and it's light, right? Which is an access point to beyond. And I usually see like their relatives or people that are over there. Now, I can't access past the light. I do know it looks like Earth, but it's, from what I'm seeing in it, it's beautiful. But the spirit is in this dimension usually and is not transcended. But the good news is they can. They usually have a period of time. So it's a whole other realm. But yeah, I can access it, but I generally don't.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I can see why you might not want to. I'm going to refer to your bio again because it's so fascinating. You say that your psychic abilities come with a great responsibility. And you also talk about helping other people with their karma, especially people who have tremendous wealth. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I gotta think about that because it's a really good question and it's something that I learned. I didn't just know that when I first started doing the cards for the public. I was very young. I was 17. But in the process of my development and my lessons learned and countless readings, thousands and thousands of readings, I don't even know how many readings, what I learned is that there is an immense responsibility that goes with whether you want to call it divination, fortune telling, whatever people call it. The responsibility is because you generally are guiding people to make decisions in their life. That holds an immense responsibility. If I'm not doing the best I can do to genuinely help this person, then I run the risk of creating karma, right? As opposed to burning it. Now, the reader, we have our own karma to burn here too. And so I have the opportunity to do that. And the more people that come with various responsibilities of their own, now by putting it on my table, I'm partaking in that responsibility. So if I have a very wealthy person that's responsible for lots of souls in their corporation or whatever they're doing, and they're consulting me, well, I better be giving them the best guidance on what's best for them to make decisions because the more you have, the more responsibility is placed on you metaphysically. So it's a very big responsibility because you're reaching into the metaphysical others to help the third dimensional construct. Can you imagine if that was done with ill intent or greed or things that were, you hear these stories of people talking about curses and you got to give money and all this weirdness. I can't tell you how bad it is for that person's soul in behaving like that with this kind of responsibility. This is a big responsibility. It in my mind, it's bigger than a priest. It's bigger than a rabbi. It's bigger than these type of people because I'm not just saying, oh, you're forgiven. I'm actually showing you, right, what needs to be done and how to do it. And I'm responsible for that. So if I give guidance to someone and they go out and do the wrong thing, if I'm giving wrong guidance, well, then I'm the one accountable for that. So it's a huge responsibility. And that was learned to me. And the more I started seeing that and accepting my own fate, in reference to why I even do this, I realize that the whole thing is about being responsible and help and guide people to create a better place in this world, you know. So it's huge, and I say that not just as a reader. That's for anyone. That's for anyone, especially a reader or a priest or a rabbi or a minister. Like once you get into those kind of contexts, you got to be really careful with what you're doing in the world. You know what I mean? Like you see these evangelists or these people making billions of dollars. My question is, do you know how much responsibility that you have with that? You know what I mean? That all-seeing eye is not prejudice, right? It sees all peoples in what they're doing. And if you're taking a stance like that, then you're going to have to answer to that in another life, another time. So that's why I say it's really responsible in what I do.
That's amazing. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
You know,
About the tarot? Why do you use the tarot for your readings?
that's a good question. I mean, you know, the tarot found me, right? The tarot found me, and I found it. Um, it happened, and to me, I look back and I realize it's fate. I really, in this life, didn't really have a lot of choice in the matter when I was young because I was so young, being groomed, right? And I wasn't the only child. Like where I was in California, there were other children going through certain school curriculum, right? The so-called mystery schools, right? And, you know, so I was being groomed. I didn't know it, but I was being groomed very young to learn metaphysical ideologies. And that was a lot of that was in Northern California, in a really, you know, in homes underground. Like you wouldn't even know what was going on. These were schools of schools. You got private school, you got public school, you got Ivy League school, and you got this school. But they just don't share these things with everyone, right? It's very compartmentalized. So by the time I was 17, I was led to it. It was led to me. That was the calling. But had I known that the reason why the cards chose me and I chose it at that time was so that when I look back now, some 30 odd years later, it was so that I could build and be directed to the others that were with me in past lives to build the lighthouse. You know, and the cards were the tool of recognition through gnosis. So it's almost like, you know, in a past life, you know, I always come to the cards because it's the way to bring us all back together, right? It's a tool. Because now that I look at the lighthouse, each and every member and person is because of finding the navigational point of ourselves. So that's why the cards are so important.
I just want to thank you, Jason, for this incredible interview. I even learned something from it, and it makes me realize that we should do a video on the tarot itself and how it can be used as a second language.
Totally.
Right?
Oh, it is the most amazing language. You know, you've got all these secular languages, but when you talk about language from spirit, right? When you don't have telepathy or you can't think you can hear and you want to hear, well, this is where the cards come in. There's a lot of people that pray and they don't hear nothing. And they're waiting around, they're looking, right? The cards are a language that, if understood how to read the language, you're able to get the messages. It's like telepathy, but through symbols. It's through sight as opposed to sound, right? So the cards are rich, they're amazing, they tell the whole history of man, woman, everything literally is in the cards. Truth be told about them. You know, it's been a fascinating ride, and you know, I've helped a lot of people. I mean, you can't help everyone. You know, like there's sometimes, you know, there's success And then there's
Have you had any failures?
sure. Let's define what a failure is. I'll try to shed light on a success and a failure. Some people, and what's the difference of? A failure would be, it's not necessarily to put fault on they say, don't shoot the messenger. Well, there's reasons for that, because the failure doesn't necessarily fall on the reader, right? What is failure? So if you sit with someone and they show you a map and they even tell you what seasons are favorable and what are not, and they might shed light on a male or female coming in that could present difficulties, right? So you give the information. Now, did the person sitting hear that information? Did they write it down? Did they tape it? Did they study it? Did they value it? Sometimes not. Sometimes people come because they're looking for entertainment, or they're looking for a shock value or something rather. They're there for the wrong reasons, right? Mm-hmm. So they leave with all this information to save their very little butts, and they make the wrong decisions. Mm-hmm. And then they want to come back and say, oh, the reading didn't do this or didn't. No, that's not true. So there are some failures, but failures lie in self-responsibility. Anytime you get a reading, you shouldn't go into a reading with the form of entertainment. I'm on the beach, I'm going to go to the palm reader because whatever, it's entertainment. Here's my 20. No, when you cross that threshold, you best not cross the threshold unless you want to hear something. And sometimes you can sit with someone and give a whole reading for a half hour, and it might only be one piece of information that's relevant, but that was worth the price of admission. So people have to be clever and really value what they're doing. And you also want word of mouth. If you go into someone on a beach or just some sidewinder sitting there, I don't know if they're good or not. They probably are if they've been on the beach for multiple years, right? But that's the chance you take. So failures can happen. Successes can happen too. I'll share just a quick story before we go. A woman came to me one day and she consulted the cards. And I used to, at that time, before I knew about responsibility, right? Sometimes I'd sit with people and give them horse races or, ways to make money. And I would say, oh, but you got to give me a little. No, that was wrong. I don't do this anymore. But at the time, I didn't understand the responsibility that I had. So there was a woman that came to me and she asked about going to a casino. And I got some information from her and we were able to nail down certain numbers and to make them applicable to this certain casino. And she happened to be leaving and driving. I was in the East Coast up in near the Boston, Worcester area, and she was headed to Vegas. And she was going to stop and pick up her brother, right? And she consulted me and said, well, should I do that? The cards were so adamant about picking the brother up and about the information of the casino. And I had said to her, when you get back, I'd like to get 20% of your earnings, right? Or whatever was said back in those silly days. This woman came back, I don't know, 6 months later or 3, I don't remember the jurisdiction of time. But what she reported to me was fascinating. She says, I went all the way down. I picked up my brother. He skipped work. I took him. He worked at the post office. We went to the casino. She won $30,000. But more importantly than winning that money based on the information was her brother was taken out of work. And that same day, there was a postal shooting in the place. Somebody shot up the people that worked at the post office.
Wow.
So he was able to save his life through the cards by her listening to the reading, and she was able to win money. And here's the kicker, why I don't do this anymore as far as gambling. She never left me the percentage of what we agreed to when she left. And that's when I knew, I says, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. Next time somebody wants to win something, don't consult me. And I haven't since. So that's a story of success in reference to good things happening when you pay attention to the reading and the information.
Well, I just want to thank you for this interview today, Jason. And I can say for myself, I've gotten incredible guidance from Jason as well. So if you want to book a reading with Jason, please reach out to us through our website, metalighthouse.org. Thank you so much for watching today.